Chapter 72. The Monkey Rope. Into the tumultuous business of cutting in and attending to the whale, there is much running backwards and forwards among the crew. Now hands are wanted here, and then again hands are wanted there. There is no staying in any one place, for at one and the same time everything has to be done everywhere. It is much the same with him who endeavors the description of the scene. We must now retrace our way a little. It was mentioned that upon first breaking ground in the whale's back, the blubber hook was inserted into the original hole, there cut by the spades of the mates. But how did so clumsy and weighty a mass as the same hook get fixed in the hole? It was inserted there by my particular friend Queequeg, whose duty it was, as harpooner, to descend upon the monster's back for the special purpose referred to. But in very many cases, circumstances require that the harpooner shall remain on the whale till the whole tensing or stripping operation is concluded. The whale, be it observed, lies almost entirely submerged, excepting the immediate parts operated upon. So down there, some 10 feet below the level of the deck, the poor harpooner flounders about, half on the whale and half in the water. The vast mass revolves like a treadmill beneath him. On the occasion in question, Queequeg figured in the Highland costume, a shirt and socks, in which to my eyes at least he appeared to uncommon advantage, and no one had a better chance to observe him, as will presently be seen. Being the savage bowsman, bowsman, that is, the person pulled the bow oar in his boat, the second from the forward, it was my cheerful duty to attend upon him while taking that scramble upon the dead whale's back. You've seen Italian organ boys holding a dancing ape by a long cord. Just so, from the ship's steep side, did I hold Queequeg down there in the sea, by what is technically called in the fishery a monkey rope, attached to a strong strip of canvas belted around his waist. It was humorously perilous business for both of us, for, before we proceed further, it must be said that the monkey rope was fast at both ends, fast to Queequeg's broad canvas belt, and fast to my narrow leather one. So that, for better or for worse, we two, for a time, were wedded, and should poor Queequeg sink to rise no more, then both usage and honor demanded that, instead of cutting the cord, it should drag me down into his wake. So then, an elongated Siamese ligature united us. Queequeg was my own inseparable twin brother, nor could I in any way get rid of the dangerous liabilities which the hempen bond entailed. So strongly and metaphysically did I conceive of my situation then, that, while earnestly watching his motions, I seemed distinctly to perceive that my own individuality was now merged in a joint stock company of two, that my free will had received a mortal wound, and that another's mistake or misfortune might plunge innocent me into unmerited disaster and death. Therefore I saw that here was a sort of interregnum in Providence, for its even-handed equity could never have so gross an injustice. And yet, still further pondering, while I jerked him now and then from behind the whale and ship, which would threaten to jam him, still further pondering, I say, I saw that this situation of mine was the precise situation of every mortal that breathes. Only, in most cases, he, one way or another, has this Siamese connection with a plurality of other mortals. If your breaker breaks, you snap. If your apothecary by mistake sends you poison in your pills, you die. True, you may say that, by exceeding caution, you may possibly escape these and other multitudinous other evil chances in life. But handle Queequeg's monkey rope heedfully as I would, sometimes he jerked it so that I came very near sliding overboard. Nor could I possibly forget that, do what I would, I had only the management of the one end of it. The monkey rope is found in all whalers, but it was only on the Pequod that the monkey and his holder were ever tied together. This improvement upon the original usage was introduced by no less a man than Stubb, in order to afford the imperiled harpooner the strongest possible guarantee for the faithfulness and vigilance of his monkey rope holder. I have hinted that I would often jerk poor Queequeg from between the whale and the ship, where he would occasionally fall from the incessant rolling and swaying of both. But this was not the only jamming jeopardy he was exposed to. Unappalled by the massacre made upon them during the night, the sharks, now freshly and more keenly allured by the before-pent blood which began to flow from the carcass, the rabid creatures swarmed round it like bees in a beehive. And right in among those sharks was Queequeg, who often pushed them aside with his floundering feet. A thing altogether incredible were it not that it attracted by such prey as a dead whale, the otherwise miscellaneous carnivorous shark will seldom touch a man. Nevertheless, it may well be believed that since they have such a ravenous finger in the pie, it is deemed but wise to look sharp to them. Accordingly, beside the monkey rope, which I now and then jerked the poor fellow from too close a vicinity to the maw of what seemed to be a peculiarly ferocious shark, he was provided with still another protection. Suspended over the side in one of the stages, Tashtigo and Dagu continually flourished over his head a couple of keen whale spades, wherewith they slaughtered as many sharks as they could reach. This procedure of theirs, to be sure, was very disinterested and benevolent of them. They meant Queequeg's best happiness, I admit, but in their hasty zeal to befriend him, and from the circumstance that both he and the sharks were at times half hidden by the blood-muddled waters, those indiscreet spades of theirs would come nearer to amputating a leg than a tail. But poor Queequeg, I suppose, straining and gasping there, that great iron hook, poor Queequeg, I suppose, only prayed to his Yojo and gave up his life into the hands of his gods. Well, well, my dear comrade and twin brother, thought I, as I drew in and then slacked off the rope to every swell of the sea. What matters it after all? Are you not a precious image of each and all of us men in the whaling world? That unsounded ocean you gasp in is life, those sharks your foes, those spades your friend, and what between sharks and spades you are in a sad pickle and peril, poor lad. But courage, there is good cheer in store for you, Queequeg. For now, as with blue lips and bloodshot eyes, the exhausted savage at last climbs up the chains and stands all dripping and involuntarily trembling over the side, the steward advances, and with a benevolent consolatory glance hands him what? Some hot cognac? No, hands him, ye gods, hands him a cup of tepid ginger and water. Ginger? Do I smell ginger? Suspiciously asked Stubb, coming near. Yes, this must be ginger, peering into the yet untasted cup. Then, standing as if incredulous for a while, he calmly walked toward the astonished steward, slowly saying, Ginger? Ginger? And what will you have the goodness to tell me, Mr. Doughboy, where lies the virtue of ginger? Ginger is a sort of fuel you use, Doughboy, to kindle a fire in this shivering cannibal. Ginger? What the devil is ginger? Sea coal, firewood, lucifer matches, tinder, gunpowder? What the devil is ginger, I say, that you offer this cup to our poor Queequeg here? There's some sneaking temperance society movement about this business, he suddenly added, now approaching Starbuck, who had just come from forward. Will you look at that cannikin, sir, and smell it if you please? Then, watching the mate's countenance, he added, The steward, Mr. Starbuck, had the face to offer that calomel and jalap to Queequeg there, this instant off the whale. Is that the steward and apothecary, sir? And may I ask whether this is a sort of bitters by which he blows back into life a half-drowned man? I trust not, said Starbuck. It is poor stuff enough. Aye, aye, steward, cried Stubb. We'll teach you to drug a harpooner. None of your apothecary's medicine here. You want to poison us, do ye? You've got insurance on all our lives and want to murder us all and pocket the proceeds, do ye? It was not me, cried Doughboy. It was Aunt Charity that brought the ginger on board and bade me never give the harpooners any spirits, but only this ginger jub, so she called it. Ginger jub, you gingerly rascal. Take that and run along with ye to the lockers and get something better. I hope I do no wrong, Mr. Starbuck. It is the captain's orders. Grog for the harpooner on a whale. Enough, replied Starbuck, only don't hit him again. But, oh, I never hurt when I hit, except when I hit a whale or something of that sort. And this fellow's a weasel. Where were you about saying, sir? Only this. Go down with him and get what thou wants thyself. Stubb reappeared. He came back with a dark flask in one hand and a sort of tea-caddy in the other. The first contained strong spirits and was handed to Queequeg. The second was Aunt Charity's gift, and that was freely given to the waves. This is the end of chapter 72. So, mentioned that Queequeg was attached by the monkey rope to Ishmael, and he said it was like the Italian boys running an organ grinder. I don't think he used the term organ grinder. But what it was one of the things that was common was you had these musical instruments that worked by turning a crank. So you turn a crank and you get music. And somebody would own a box that makes music, and they would own a monkey. And the monkey would go around dancing. So you play the tune and the monkey dances. And the monkey would go out with his hat and you'd give money to the monkey, and the monkey would give the money to the person, and everybody was happy. So there's a few of them around still. There's a few people around who still do this, but it's difficult to get hold of monkey permits and permits to, perform in public. So they tend to be fairly rare, but you see them occasionally at like Renaissance fairs and such. So you have somebody playing music and the monkey dancing and getting this stuff. And quite often the monkey is connected by a rope. And the type of monkeys used are usually Capuchins, which are little teeny tiny monkeys with this brown face and kind of a white fringe around it. And they were named after the Capuchin monks who had these hoods with the white around the edge. So the monkeys look like the Capuchin monks, and the Capuchin monks are the same ones who came up with Cappuchino. So the monkey, the monk, the coffee, all kind of related. Sort of, at least by name. Let's see. Mentioned that Queequeg was on the whale like a treadmill. So they talked about how they were pulling the blubber off the whale, and the whale was turning as they were pulling off the blubber in one big long strip, like peeling an orange. And said that Queequeg did it like a treadmill. Nowadays, a treadmill is a piece of exercise equipment. So, you have the treadmill and you run on it, so you stay in the same space, but you run, and so you get your exercise without having to go outside and without, having to go out and come back. Because when I go out for a walk, I walk out 5 miles, I walk back 5 miles. If I'm on a treadmill, I can do 10 miles. Or I can do 7 miles, and if I get too tired after 7 miles, I can just stop and get off. If I walk out 5 miles and I walk back, I have to walk back the full 5 miles, because otherwise I won't get home. No, unless I call your Lolly and she comes and rescues me, which she does quite a bit, and I'm really grateful for. But so the treadmill, you can just get off. Now the thing is that back in these days, this is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and they had machinery, but they didn't have good ways to power it. So one of the things that they had was they had these things called treadmills, which was a mill, like a mill for grinding corn, a mill for running equipment, for whatever, that worked by foot power. And there were people whose job it was to essentially climb stairs, and they would be climbing these ladders continuously, putting force into a series of steps, or sometimes it was like beams that were suspended from chains, and they were just continuously climbing up and up and up, and this was miserable, back-breaking work. But it was done at the time because that was the best source, that was a source of power. Sometimes they had donkeys, horses, mules, oxen going in a circle attached to a pole, so you have the pole going like this, turning a wheel, and then the wheel turning other wheels. But this was people climbing stairs essentially to power things, kind of like a giant hamster wheel, same sort of principle. And a lot of times this was used in debtors' prisons. So back in the 1700s, 1800s, they had these things called debtors' prisons, where if you owed money and you didn't have a job and you couldn't find work, you would go to this prison and you would be fed, and you would have a roof over your head, and you would have to do this dull, meaningless work. You would have to do this really dull, difficult work. So you had people who essentially ran in this treadmill, and they were paid a small pittance for this. And part of that went to pay off their debt, and part of that went to pay for their food and their lodging. So it's like, okay, you owe $50. You're sentenced to 2 weeks on the treadmill. So you spend your 2 weeks on the treadmill, your $50 is paid off, and you walk out of there tired. But this was one of those things that was common back then. It later got banned, probably for good reason. So that was the treadmill. And ginger. Now, ginger, I love the taste of ginger. Ginger is wonderful. Ginger snaps, gingerbread. Ginger is a great flavor. It is a tropical plant, and you eat the root of it. So I grew ginger once, had a pot, went to the store, got a root of ginger that Walmart sells for people to chop up and put into food. But I took the piece of ginger and I stuck it in a pot. And it grew from the bit that I stuck in the pot. So the bit that I stuck in the pot, it grew and shot up and had these leaves, and I harvested it before flowers, but I put in a little piece of ginger root and I got a big piece of ginger root. And so I took that ginger root and I tried making ginger beer out of it. But that didn't work so well because I ended up spilling it, and it just made a mess on the deck outside as I was trying to cool it down, which was kind of very sad. But ginger is a wonderful taste. And so it's also very good for seasickness. So if you ever have an upset stomach, if you feel like you're going to vomit, ginger is very good to stop that. It's also good for, as I said, stopping seasickness. I'm not sure the exact mechanism where it just calms the stomach, but it's really great for that. So keep in mind the ginger is good for that. But Stubb was a bit upset that his rum was substituted for ginger, and he just, well, the second of Aunt Charity's gift was freely given to the waves. So Stubb just brought it up and tossed it overboard. And that is chapter 72, The Monkey Rope.